Hey, it's Melissa from Kiwi Banana, and today some things that I think that you may want to know if you're coming here or you're ever just interested in the country itself. I'm staying in the area of Portland, and I am staying in quite a rural part of Portland as well. So my experience here may differ from someone who's staying in a different area of Jamaica, and of course depending on how you like to travel, that will differ as well. For myself, I tend to go more on the cheaper side, and Jamaica has definitely been a good choice, a good option for what I'm wanting and what I can sort of afford. Now, the population of Jamaica is about 2.8 million people, and about 1.3 million people visit here a year. Now, the Jamaican currency that they use is the Jamaican dollar, and I would say this is a rough estimation. Of course, the exchange rates could change, fluctuate all the time anyway, especially during the weekdays when markets open. So, 100 Jamaican dollars is about 1.12 New Zealand dollars, or about 80 cents US. And I guess to give you an indicator of how much something might cost, for me here, if I was to catch let's just say, like a public taxi sort of system that they have here. It's not just a taxi for you. They'll pick up people along the way. Just you stand out on the side of the road and you wave, and they've got room, then you get in. So somewhere like Long Bay to Port Antonio, which is about 25 kilometers, and that costs you about 200 Jamaican dollars for one person going one way. So it's not too bad. It's definitely affordable, especially for someone like myself who doesn't want to spend the money on having to hire a vehicle or pay for a private taxi. It's been a good way to get around, even though I'm in quite a rural part of Jamaica. Now, the First Nations people, Indigenous people that were here, they were here quite a long time ago, and they possibly descended from South America. So there would have been a bit of influence of that culture all throughout the country. However, with the Spanish and British rule, colonization, I don't really know if that's the right term to use, but that's the term that most people tend to use. With that meant that most of those people died out with the introduction of disease. So unfortunately, there's not many of those people left in the country. And also, obviously, with the Spanish and British rule and with that timing, it also meant that the population here is now about 90% plus of African descent, obviously with the use of slavery. And that is a video for another day. Now, I'd say Christianity is the main religion here. About 65% of the population identifies with that, and about 20% identifies with no religion, and about 2% identifies with the Rastafarian religion. Even though it's quite a small number, I guess, the Rastafarian religion is kind of like one of the number one sort of religions that people think of when they think of Jamaica. I mean, not everybody, but I know a lot of people think of that, think of the colours and the way that people look when they identify with this sort of Rastafarian religion. And of course the rest of the percent is different other religions. Anyway, moving on. So the main language is English. So if you speak English, you should be fine. Of course, because they've developed sort of their own accent, and when they're speaking with each other and you speak quite fast, you may have to tune in your ears a little bit more to sort of understand what they're saying. But other than that, it's pretty good if you speak English or you know quite a bit English to come here. It's the main language that people use to communicate with each other, and it's pretty good. It's pretty easy for someone like myself who speaks English. So Kingston is the capital, and Montego Bay is also another place that a lot of tourists go to. And you'll get a different experience if you stay in Kingston than if you would have Montego Bay, or even if you stayed in another part of Jamaica. So it's not all the same. You know, maybe if you go to one part of Jamaica and you don't like that sort of part, then maybe look at another area. You know, it's different areas got different things to offer. The people will vary, of course. You know, not everyone's the same. You know, it's a sort of like a product of their upbringing and their community and what's around them. And of course in the country it's a lot slower paced life, and then in the cities a lot more hustle and bustle, and you know, and that just depends on what you like and how do you like to travel, obviously. Now the climate is reasonably hot, or they would call it hot, and humid. There is some dry areas I think in the southeast, and they do have rainy seasons. I'm here in the rainy season at the moment, and it's roughly sitting around about 30 degrees Celsius most days, so that's not too bad. Can rain quite heavily, and well, while I'm recording this is early November, so rainy season will pass soon, and then it'll get back into that hotter weather. You know, it really depends on obviously if you're very much about, you know, traveling to certain places, you want certain temperatures, then you might want to time it at a certain time of the year as to when you come to Jamaica, as to what sort of temperature you're going to get, and also maybe look at what areas you want to stay in, depending on what sort of humidity or what sort of weather you want as well. Now they also can have hurricanes here, and they also are susceptible to earthquakes. So you know, those things happen here, and you know, I guess you could plan your trip around a hurricane season if you really wanted to. Earthquakes, of course, are pretty much unpredictable. With my own experience living in New Zealand, in the city of Christchurch. Now with things to do, well, there's a lot of things to do. If you're into that outdoorsy stuff, there's definitely beaches and waterfalls. There's a lagoon not too far from where we are, which is really great. And you know, there's national parks. I'm not really a person that's very much into shopping, so I couldn't really talk to you about that sort of style of travel. But yeah, if you're into outdoorsy stuff, then there's definitely quite a bit to do, especially if you're not in the city, or you can easily get transport out of you know, the hustle and bustle and into the country. Now, so crime, it does happen. It happens everywhere in the world, of course. The murder rate here is reasonably high for the number of people. However, most of the crime occurs in the areas of Kingston and Montego Bay, and most of that crime is theft related. You know, normally with the tourists, I guess. So if you are in those areas, you know, you just want to be careful with what you're bringing with you, what are you carrying around with you, and your whereabouts and things like that. You know, I wouldn't let that stop me from going to Jamaica, even if I was going to Kingston or Montego Bay. You just have to have, as I may say, your wits about you. Okay, so music here is big, of course. You know, reggae, Bob Marley. They do have some other styles of music that have, I guess, come from that sort of genre, or if they've been influenced from that genre. And even some of the music here has been a big influence in some of the music in other countries in the world, which is really good. I'm hoping to actually visit Bob Marley's museum, and near the end of this travel we're going to go to Kingston for one night, so fingers crossed I can take you along with me for that, because that would be really nice too. Sport is big here as well, so they've got things like cricket, athletics, of course, Usain Bolt, rings any bells there, anybody? Boxing, not so much boxing, but you know, they've definitely had a few big names come out there. And the football, you know, if you're from New Zealand, we call it soccer. So yeah, so those are the main sort of sports. Because I'm from New Zealand, I also know that they play netball, and they're quite good with that. Some of you may not know what netball is, but it's a ball sport. It's a team-run sort of game, and you're passing a ball up and down a court, and you're not allowed to bounce it. So it's similar to basketball, but there's no sort of bouncing, and you're not allowed to have any contact. And it's a sport that actually a lot of women play. And the Jamaican team, I would say, probably be roughly around about third best team in the world. So yep, thought I'd better share some of that as well. And of course, so last thing I want to talk about was sort of their sectors, their industries that tend to do really well here. So they've got agriculture, they've got mining, manufacturing, tourism, of course, a little bit of the financial and insurance. That tends to be everywhere in the world at the moment now. But I guess for me, when I'm thinking about food, the main foods that they sort of export are things like sugar, bananas, coffee, rum, and yams. So yeah, that is trying to keep this pretty quick if I can. It's a bit of information to cover for you, but those are the sort of things that that you might want to know about Jamaica before you come here, or if you're thinking about traveling anywhere and this sounds like a really good place for you to come. I'll see you in the next video, and I hope you've done something that makes you happy today.